Fenton & Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. ESPN 102.5 The Game. I am Caroline Fenton, joined by Mark Howard, filling in for Jared Stillman today. Mark, how we doing?
Not too bad. Probably better than you and Jared. Your respective alma maters did not do very well over the weekend.
No, we did not. And I thought last night, I was like, I never want my LSU Tigers to lose ever. And that was a tough loss against UCLA, especially since I was boasting about how good LSU was going to be this year. And that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. I thought as long as I can kind of give Jared the same kind of jabs he was able to give me yesterday, then I consider that a win.
I would say you're right there.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you're here with us, but I just cannot wait until tomorrow when he's back, and I can just give him the business about his Louisville Cardinals looking just absolutely terrible against Ole Miss last night.
Yeah, but unlike LSU and Coach Bench Press Orgeron, they weren't favored.
That's probably fair.
I've always called them Coach Bench
That's
Press.
the thing, is Ole Miss was expected to win. I expected LSU to win. I thought, okay, down 2020, it was a rebuilding year. We'll be back in 2021, and we'll start it off with a statement win at the Rose Bowl Stadium, but that is not the case.
Yeah, the narrative around LSU these days and Orgeron is Gene Chizik 2.0.
Oh, I've heard it.
Won a national title, and then a few years later, bye-bye.
I've heard that. And I was talking with Elijah before the show. I said, if you would have asked me, hey, would you give up 10 years of just absolute mediocre football where you have losing seasons, don't make it to a bowl game, but you have the best, one of the best, if not the best college football seasons in college football history, win a national championship, you get a Heisman winning trophy quarterback, would you do it? And 100% I would do it. I would do it again. So as little success as LSU has had in the past year in this first week of college football, we still have 2019 to hold on to. And I kind of sound like a Tennessee fan there, saying, hey, we had 98. We had 98, but at least I have a little bit of recency bias there.
Yeah, you've got the Orgeron championship. You got the Les Miles championship.
You got the Saban championship.
The Saban championship. So you've got a few.
That's true. We have 2019 to hold on to. And we will get into more college football later on in the show. ESPN college football analyst Trevor Matich will join us. We'll ask him his thoughts about week one, some of his biggest takeaways, what he saw from a lot of the new starting quarterbacks, new coaches that we have had in college football so far in week one. And we will get into a bunch of Titans talk. We have a lot of Titans things to go over. And speaking of that, it is Titans game week. Titans play the Cardinals on Sunday in their week one home opener. And Mark Howard will join the squad for the Titans pregame show.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, we'll break it down in what could be a very interesting Sunday as the NFL opens, starting Thursday with the Cowboys in Tampa Bay.
Now, we will get into all of that, but since you mentioned the Cowboys in Tampa Bay, we discussed the Cowboys a little bit yesterday, and Sam Ancho, who's a contributor for ESPN on First Take, said that if he had to choose between a super tight game or an absolute Tampa Bay Buccaneer blowout over the Cowboys, he said that he thought it was going to be a close game.
I think it's going to be a close game,
You
too.
do? Why?
Because I just think because with the NFL, you got to think oppo, and right now the public, the public thinks the Cowboys look terrible in the preseason, which they did, but they didn't have Dak Prescott, and they didn't do a whole lot. And Tampa Bay is the defending Super Bowl champions, and they are there, and the Cowboys are there.
Back this year.
But I'm just telling you, in the NFL, things, especially week one, things can get very goofy. And you're going to have a whole lot of overreactions the Monday after week one. But I think there are going to be a few surprises.
And I think there were a lot of overreactions after college football week one as well. A lot of people ready to go ahead and stamp Alabama college football playoff national champions.
Well, you
Clemson's
do that.
On
It's not
a
exactly
downward
a reach.
spiral. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I think anyone could have kind of expected that to happen. And we will get into all of that. I want to hear more of Mark's NFL takes and NFL takes from around the league, not just in the Titans. And he'll have his Titans takes on Sunday for the Titans-Cardinals preseason game. Starts at 9:30 on Sunday morning. But first and foremost, we had a little bit of Titans news today. The Titans have restructured wide receiver Julio Jones's contract. So he originally signed they converted his $14 million salary this year into a signing bonus, which will create a little over $11 million of cap space for the Titans this year, adding 2 void years to the contract. So your initial thoughts when you first saw the Julio Jones news, Mark?
Well, I think it's just cap management. It's going to create like $11 million more under the cap for the Titans, and so that does give them some maneuverability. I mean, first of all, if you're a GM, you don't want that hanging over your head, being that tight against the cap. So we'll see.
So his original cap hit was $15.3 million. Now, after a restructure and adding 2 voidable years, his cap hit will rise to $14.3 million next year and the following year. So in 2021, he's due $4.1 million. 2022, he's $14.3-ish million. 2024 and 2025 void years, $2.8 million.
Yeah.
So creating, and according to overthecap.com, Titans now have about $5.6 million in cap space to start the 2021 season, which, as you mentioned, gives John Robinson a little bit of breathing room and a little bit of maneuverability going into the season. But in your opinion, Mark, what do you think the Titans are doing with this additional cap space?
Well, I think you use it as a safeguard to sign some veterans if the situation presents itself. To maybe take on a little bit more salary, with a quality veteran if that situation presents itself. But, again, you don't want to have to do cap gymnastics during the season. And I think John Robinson was doing his gardening before they put the ball on the tee just to be ready in the event he has to go out and sign somebody.
If there's any, because we'll get into the newly released Titans depth chart later on in the show. But there are some question marks still listed on the updated depth chart. Of course, it's an official depth chart, and everything is subject to change. But if you were John Robinson today, and you have that $5.6 million, and you had to sign a player today to fill in for Week 1 with that $5 million, is there a position group that you are targeting?
Maybe tight end, but beyond that, the question marks he has are positions where they have high draft picks that they're just going to have to, slow play. Offensive line, right tackle, Radens is they're obviously not going to rush him in there, throw him in there. And a cornerback, I don't think they're going to rush Caleb Farley. So, you view this 17-game season as a marathon and not a sprint. So at the beginning of the season, whatever roster machinations you do might be based on injury more than anything else. But again, if you're a general manager, you want to be prepared.
And I think this also brings up another point that we have talked about so much in this offseason is the Titans Super Bowl window, because you see the Titans continuing to push some cap space down the line, both in Julio Jones and Ryan Tannehill. And you look, the Titans are financially committed in this newly renovated deal with Julio Jones through 2025. Julio Jones, in my opinion, is not going to be an all-pro wide receiver in 2025. So I think it just also highlights this Super Bowl window or this championship window that the Titans are in right now, because they're just kicking cap space down the line. And in 2024, 2025, when they're due millions and millions of dollars to Ryan Tannehill, Julio Jones, other contracts that may renegotiate, when they're older players out of their prime.
Well, this year was kind of an outlier because of COVID-19 last year. The cap actually went down, and that required a lot of cap gymnastics by GMs. But I think they anticipate the cap being significantly more next year. So I think they feel like with certain players, they can kick the can down the road. You don't want to do it with too many players. But, this is a year where you're going to see a lot of GMs hamstrung by their salary cap situations, more so than you would, any of the past, 5 or 10 years.
And you do make a fair point in that the cap will most likely explode in the next coming years. I mean, you look at these massive TV deals that the NFL is willing to negotiate. And also, I do kind of worry about the TV money and COVID surrounding this year. is the league going to lose out on some TV money if there are COVID
no,
situations?
I mean they've already got their TV money. They already made their deal, so that's done. So they know what they got cost certainty. Unless games are canceled, but they've already said teams might forfeit, but beyond that, I don't think that there's a big worry about that. COVID-19 is a worry in terms of knocking coaches and even star players out of games on short notice. That's definitely a worry. But as it pertains to the salary cap, I don't think that I don't think that's a big worry right now if you're a general manager.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. The Titans have restructured wide receiver Julio Jones's contract, added 2 voidable years later on in his contract, freeing up about $5.6 million in cap space for the 2021 season. Your thoughts on Julio's restructured contract? What do you think the Titans are going to do with that newfound cap space? And what do you think of the restructuring of Julio Jones's contract? But coming up next, we will take a look at the first depth chart released in the regular season now that we're going into this week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. Our thoughts on it, some of our takeaways from the Titans' unofficial depth chart that was released today. We'll get that coming up next. We'll take your calls, your texts. You are listening to Stillman & Company live on 102.5 The Game.
Quisenberry locked up right tackle.
That's Quiz will probably work there. He's going to have to know, play all four spots for us, both guards and the tackle. But, I think, we'll see how that thing plays out throughout the week. I think Kendall will have opportunities. Ty will have opportunities, but, not really ready to name a starter. I think all those guys are going to play probably in the game for us. But, Quiz has been out there. He's been very efficient, and he's been available and been durable. So, we've got some guys coming back. That may change today based on Ben's and Nate's availability not being here. And then that may look different towards the end of the week, too.
That was Titans head coach Mike Vrabel on the updated depth chart that was released today. The first one unofficially released ahead of week 1. The Titans take on the Arizona Cardinals here at Nissan Stadium. He's talking about the right tackle position, and I think that has been one position of question really since the beginning of camp. And it seems like all of these questions have continued to be left unanswered, rather. Because in the unofficial depth chart that was released today, a right tackle has still not yet been named. David Quessenberry, Tyson Brilo, and Kendall Lamb are all three names that are listed beside each other, but they're not necessarily listed as starter, right tackle 2, right tackle 3. What do you make of that? Because I know we talked in mid to late June maybe, and we said, hey, there's not a starter listed here yet. This guy is here, but we're not going to worry about it in June. But here we are, less than a week until game day. Right tackle still not named.
Well, most people think it's going to be Tyson Brello. Dylan Radins is still not ready. He went through the preseason, took his lumps. Obviously remains a work in progress. I mean, they knew this. He hadn't played much football, preceding the draft. He only played a game last year. So and that was at the FBC level. So the Titans knew coming in that his rookie year would be more or less a redshirt year. Unless you are totally unrealistic, I just don't know how you could be surprised that they're facing this situation. I mean, that they knew coming in that this kid was raw, and that it was going to take him a year or so to get him on his feet. So that doesn't surprise me a bit as far as that's concerned. And Caleb Farley is going to be brought along slowly because, again, that only makes sense. He hasn't played a whole lot of football. He's coming off a catastrophic injury that you don't want to mess with. You don't want to push it until you have to. So that was sort of the price of drafting these two guys that – as the years go on, sort of playing the long game with both of these guys, and you figure, in 2 or 3 years you're going to look pretty smart. It's like Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons, when the Titans drafted him, they knew that he was not going to start the season with him because of his knee injury, and he has matured into potentially, with a capital P, a real force at defensive tackle. So, that's the roll of the dice when you draft a guy who has injury issues, or in Radens' situation has FBC issues related to COVID-19. I mean, that's just sort of the hand you were dealt.
And I think you do make a good point about Tyson Brilo coming into his sophomore season a little bit slower probably than a typical rookie would in his first season, coming into a COVID season, like you mentioned, coming into off of an injury problem. I think Christian Fulton also kind of had those similar woes coming in, having a really slow start in the NFL, probably not playing as many snaps as you would expect him to, but we see listed as a starting corner, Christian Fulton. So what do you expect for the Tyson Brilo, Christian Fulton, any of these other in their quote-unquote sophomore seasons? What do you expect to see from them after an unordinary 2020?
Well, Fulton's been kind of up and down in camp, for starters. So, we'll find out, when it gets real on Sunday. But he's had his moments. But I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I think a lot of that's going to be predicated on the pass rush, helping that secondary. I'm just a firm believer in that. that if you don't have a good pass rush, it doesn't matter who's back there. So the Titans' pass rush has to be better. As far as Sembrello is concerned, they just need him to be adequate. But he's going to be facing, J.J. Watt this week. J.J. Watt moves around a lot. Sometimes he'll test the right tackle. Sometimes he'll test the left tackle. Sometimes he'll go A-gap, right up the middle. And that is the problem with a healthy and vital J.J. Watt. So, you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see and you think back to right tackles past. And even a guy like Jack Conklin, who was an All-Pro his first year, got a lot of help, from a blocking tight end. So I'm sure who's ever out there at right tackle, Sembrello, Radens, it doesn't really matter. Quessenberry, and Mike Vrabel has a soft spot in his heart for Quessenberry. You don't coach this game on sentiment, but you know that guy's going to go out there and do a professional job for you. He's he's a below average talent who makes up for it in attitude and heart. There's a reason why he's not a starter, but still, he will go out there and give you a representative effort, and Vrabel loves that about him. So, that's going to be an area for the Titans to keep an eye on. But whomever is at right tackle is going to get some help with the pass rush.
One thing I did find interesting that Vrabel said is, in that quote that we played coming back from break, he said all of those guys will probably play in the game.
Yeah.
So, I'm not exactly sure how that works as far as, rotation. Right. Is there, you never really seen a rotation at right tackle in NFL in a
regular season game
before.
That feels like kind of a preseason thing.
Is it like a package-based thing? Is it like on pass long, third and long, you got to bring somebody else in? On first down, you want to have – and so that will be interesting. I don't know. I've never really heard that before.
What is it going to be, like a pitching rotation where
Exactly.
they're going to have four guys?
Right.
Yeah, this is the part that he said.
I think all those guys are going to play probably in the game for us, but
I don't know if he's talking about special teams roles or what.
He does say play in the game, and I hate to play semantics here, but sometimes with Mike Vrabel you have to. Mm-hmm. So he says play in the game, and it makes me a little bit nervous whenever you're going against J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones and the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
If you're Mike Vrabel, who are you putting in at right tackle? Let's just say if he just puts in one because we don't necessarily know
I think
roles.
Vrabel looks at right tackle as sort of an all-hands-on-deck situation, and I guess if Sembrello starts out and he plays well, he'll stay in there. If he doesn't, maybe they yank him for Lamb or for Quessenberry. I mean, who knows? But we'll find out a lot about the way they're going to handle that situation on Sunday.
A couple more positions that I thought were interesting on this unofficial depth chart that was released today by the Titans. The slot receiver role. Chester Rogers is listed above Josh Reynolds, which was a little bit of a shock to me because I came into this season pre-Julio Jones expecting Josh Reynolds to be that wide receiver 2 behind A.J. Brown. And then whenever they acquired Julio Jones, I thought, okay, Josh Reynolds slides into that slot role, that wide receiver 3 role. Chester Rogers has beaten him out for that position. What are your takeaways from that?
Snaps can be a funny thing as the game progresses. I'm sure the game will dictate who plays how many snaps. But I think it's reflective of how, Chester Rogers has come in and made a huge impression, not only, as a receiver, but as a kick returner. And he's earned his spot there. So he'll get a chance there. We'll see how much Tannehill goes to him. But I think you'll see plenty of Josh Reynolds, too.
Chester Rogers, to your point, listed as punt returner, kick returner. Cam Batson listed as backup kick returner. Another position that whenever this list first came out, whenever their first depth chart first came out, Jeff Swaim listing tight ends, and those are two guys that are kind of battling out for those starting tight end spots. But Jeff Swaim still listed as tight end 1 with Anthony Firkser as tight end.
Through it, we'll see how much they use him. I mean, he knows the system. He had a cut, and the